Welcome back to Stock Explorers. Today we're doing a deep dive into a company that's been getting some attention, USA Rare Earth Inc., ticker USR.
That's right. Definitely one for investors interested in critical minerals and, domestic supply chains to keep an eye on.
So their big goal, as I understand it, is creating a full U.S.-based supply chain for rare earths,
Yeah.
all the way from the mine.
To the magnet, exactly. That's the core idea, this mine-to-magnet vertical integration.
And the thinking is that keeps things secure, maybe lowers costs.
Precisely. More control, less reliance on complex global supply lines, especially for something as critical as rare earth.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Where are they right now? What are the main parts of this plan?
Well, you've got the mining side, developing the resource extraction, and then the manufacturing side actually making the magnets.
And they're kind of in the middle of making it happen.
Yeah, they're in that crucial transition phase, moving, from R&D, lab work, towards actually producing commercially.
I saw they hit some milestones recently. That seemed pretty significant.
Oh, definitely. Back in January 2025, they produced dysprosium oxide, 99.1% pure, from their own Roundtop ore.
Okay, 99.1% pure. Why is dysprosium specifically such a big deal?
Well, dysprosium is one of those critical heavy rare earths. You need it for high-performance magnets, the kind that can handle heat. Think electric vehicles, wind turbines.
Right, things that get hot.
Exactly. So proving they can purify it themselves using their own ore and methods here in the U.S., that's a major step towards independence. It potentially gives them a real edge.
And it's not just the raw material, they're actually making magnets too.
They are. Early 2025, they produced their first batch of sintered rare earth magnets. It's at their Stillwater, Oklahoma plant, which is still under development, but it shows real progress on the manufacturing front.
Taking them closer to that complete mine-to-magnet picture.
Step by step, yeah.
So what are the goals? What kind of volume are they talking about for these magnets?
The plan is to hit phase 1 of commercial production by 2026. That's targeting around 1,200 metric tons of neodymium magnets a year.
1,200 tons. And beyond that,
they're looking to scale up quite a bit, eventually aiming for nearly 5,000 tons per year in later phases.
wow, okay. That would make them a pretty significant domestic player then.
It could, yeah. Especially given the demand growth we're seeing in EVs, renewables, and so on.
Let's talk about the source. The Roundtop deposit in West Texas. What's special about that site?
It's strategically really interesting. For one, it's got a huge variety, 15 of the 17 rare earth elements.
15, including those heavy ones.
Including significant amounts of the valuable heavy rare earths like dysprosium, which we just mentioned, and terbium, too. And it's not just rare earths.
Oh, what else?
It also holds other critical minerals, gallium, beryllium, lithium, adds another layer of potential value and strategic importance.
So the resource itself is pretty rich, enough to supply their own needs.
Projections suggest it's more than enough for their own magnet production for a long time, and potentially enough to supply surplus material to others as well.
And how are they getting these minerals out and separated? Are they using standard techniques?
Yeah. Not entirely. They're developing proprietary tech at their Colorado facility. It's sort of a multi-stage process.
How does that work?
It starts with conventional heap leaching, pretty standard stuff to get the minerals out of the ore initially, but then they use their own continuous ion exchange technology for the separation part.
Continuous ion exchange. Is that different?
It potentially offers advantages over traditional batch processing, maybe more efficient, perhaps lower cost, and importantly, they seem set on doing all this processing domestically.
Keeping it all in-house, reinforcing that secure supply chain goal.
Exactly.
Okay, let's jump back to the other end, the Stillwater, Oklahoma plant, the magnet manufacturing.
Right. That's purely focused on producing these sintered neodymium magnets. High-performance ones.
And the targets there again were?
Starting at 1,200 metric tons annually, scaling up towards that 5,000-ton mark eventually.
Which really positions them, if they hit those targets, as a key domestic source for components needed in, well, a lot of modern tech and defense.
Definitely. And that first commercial phase target is still 2026.
Yeah. Now, this all sounds, frankly, expensive. Building mines, processing plants, magnet factories. How are they funding this?
Well, they just went public, actually. Merged with a SPAC Inflection Point Acquisition Core 2 back in March 2025.
Ah, the SPAC route.
Yep. Started trading on NASDAQ as USR on March 14th.
So that brought in some capital.
It did. They secured nearly $50 million through the PIPE, the private investment in public equity. That included an $8 million upsize, suggesting decent investor interest at the time.
And that money's crucial for well, everything they're trying to do.
Absolutely. Funding the R&D scale up, building out Stillwater, continuing work on the processing side, it's all capital intensive.
How's the stock been doing since the listing? I heard it was a bit volatile.
It certainly has been. Huge jump on day one, up 70%, closed over $18. But yeah, it's come down quite a bit since then. Dropped to around $7.37 by early April.
Hmm.
Saw a little bump in pre-market the next day, but that kind of volatility isn't totally unexpected for a company at this stage, especially in this sector.
And they're not generating revenue yet, presumably.
Appears to be pre-revenue, yes. Consistent with being in development. They'll almost certainly need more funding down the road until those magnet sales really start kicking in.
Who's steering the ship here? What about the leadership team?
The CEO is Joshua Ballard. His background is interesting, came from ceramics manufacturing, specifically a company called Energy Recovery.
Ceramics. How does that translate?
He's apparently drawn parallels, suggesting the processes for scaling up manufacturing have similarities. The chairman is Mike Blitzer, who is the CEO of the SPAC they merged with.
Okay.
And they've filled out the rest of the C-suite, CFO, COO, investor relations, legal, government operations. Looks like a pretty complete team on paper.
Right, let's zoom out. The big picture. How does USR fit in the global rare earth market?
It's a big market, around $14 billion a year for the magnets alone. And right now, China really dominates, controlling over 60% of it.
So there's definitely room for others, especially domestic players.
Huge potential, yeah. In the U.S., direct competition in mining and processing is limited. The main name is MP Materials.
Ah, yes, MP Materials. They operate the Mountain Pass mine, right?
That's the one. The only other active U.S. rare earth mine currently.
So how does USR stack up against MP? What's the difference in strategy?
They're both aiming to boost U.S. supply, but they have different focuses. MP is primarily about light rare earths, neodymium, though they are also getting into magnets now.
Okay, the lighter elements.
USR, on the other hand, is really emphasizing those heavy rare earths from Roundtop, Disprosium, terbium, and their whole model is built around that complete vertical integration, mine to magnet.
So different resource focus and a fully integrated model for USR.
That seems to be the key differentiator. MP's been more focused upstream, though they're expanding. Plus, the whole national security angle gives both companies a strategic tailwind.
Given all that, what would you say are USR's main competitive advantages, potentially?
Okay, several things. One, that domestic vertical integration, potential cost control, less supply chain risk. Two, being an early mover in U.S.-made sintered neodymium magnets.
Right.
Three, controlling those heavy rare earths, especially dysprosium and terbium from Roundtop. That's strategically significant.
The proprietary processing tech.
Yes, that continuous ion exchange could be an advantage if it scales well. Then there's the inherent resilience from being domestic, aligning with government priorities.
Which could mean support down the line.
Potentially. And finally, they talk about economic advantages from their resource and aiming for modern ESG standards.
We keep coming back to neodymium magnets and dysprosium. Maybe we can dig into those a bit more. Why are they so important?
Okay, so NeFiB magnets, neodymium iron boron, they're just incredibly strong for their size, the most powerful permanent magnets we have commercially.
Strong, and they don't easily lose their magnetism.
Exactly. High resistance to demagnetization. That's why they're everywhere. EV motors, wind turbines, smartphones, hard drives, MRI machines, you name it.
And dysprosium's role.
Disprosium is the key additive for making those magnets work well at high temperatures. Without it, they lose their magnetic strength much faster as things heat up.
Which is critical in an EV motor or a big wind turbine generator.
Absolutely critical for performance and reliability in those demanding applications. Dysprosium also pops up in nuclear reactors, some lasers, but magnets are the big one.
And dysprosium is scarcer, you mentioned. How does that affect things?
Its scarcity, plus the fact that production is concentrated geographically, makes its price very sensitive. Demand is rising fast from EVs and renewables.
So supply disruptions or geopolitical issues can really spike the price.
Exactly. We've seen significant volatility in the past. Projections show demand continuing to climb, which likely means sustained higher prices, impacting costs for anyone needing those high-performance magnets.
How technically does adding dysprosium help? What's it actually doing in the magnet?
It boosts something called coercivity. Basically, it's resistance to being demagnetized.
Yeah.
When dysprosium atoms are added, either into the magnet structure or diffused along the grain boundaries during manufacturing, they make it harder for heat or external magnetic fields to mess with the magnet's alignment.
Like reinforcement.
Kinda, yeah. It helps the magnet hold on to its strength at higher operating temperatures.
Hmm.
There's a bit of a trade-off. Sometimes adding it slightly reduces the peak magnetic strength at room temp.
Okay.
But engineers optimize the amount. They balance it to get the high temp performance needed for specific uses, like inside that hot EV motor.
Makes sense. Now, despite all this potential, there are always risks. What are the big hurdles for USR that investors should watch?
Definitely. Scaling up is always a huge challenge. Going from lab results to reliable, large-scale commercial production, both for mining and magnets, it's tough.
Technical hurdles, operational hiccups,
All of that. Then there's financial sustainability. They're pre-revenue, they'll need ongoing funding. Managing cash burn until they're profitable is key.
and competition.
Yes, they're entering a market with established global players, especially from China, who have economies of scale and lots of experience.
Geopolitics too, I imagine.
Always a factor with critical minerals. And finally, just executing on their own tech, making sure that proprietary processing works efficiently and reliably at scale.
Lots to navigate. So, wrapping this up for our Stock Explorers listeners, what's the bottom line on USR?
Look, it represents a really interesting, potentially significant opportunity in a critical sector. The focus on a domestic, vertically integrated supply chain, especially with those heavy rare earth and magnet manufacturing,
Yeah,
it's compelling.
but there's always a but.
But yeah, it's crucial to remember they're still very much in the development stage. Success really hinges on executing these ambitious plans over the next few years. There are real risks involved.
So, for our listeners, do your homework. Dig deeper. Consider your own investment goals and risk tolerance before making any decisions about USR.
Absolutely essential.
Okay, that's all the time we have for this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. If you found this valuable, please do subscribe, give us a like, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration.